We hear it repeated from both sides of this issue in the gun debate. Guns are not toys. And yet, the thing is, what if a toy is a gun? What's a parent to do about all of this? Dr. Elizabeth Mead with Swedish Medical Center is here. So let's start with the science. Is there any research about toy guns and whether they're good or bad for kids?
There's a lot of conflicting research. I mean, I think we don't have a lot of research that says they're good for kids, but neither do we have a lot of research that specifically says that they're bad for children. So I think it's very child dependent, and it has a lot to do with how they're allowed to play with them and the discussions that happen within a family.
So let's start there. If I come to you as a parent and I say, you know, my kid is playing with toy guns and it makes me uncomfortable, what would your advice to me be?
There are so many facets to this discussion, I think. And so one thing for a lot of parents is that there is a little bit of an ick factor, I think, especially in this time when we're witnessing all these shootings and all these terrible things happening, that parents often feel like they are very uncomfortable with it. And I think that's okay. If you are uncomfortable with that, especially in your own home, you can make that rule for your children. I also know a lot of parents who say, you know, it is sort of a natural part of kid play to be interested in sort of, and it's really about power for kids, right? And getting rid of bad guys and all those things that kids come up with. But a lot of parents are being really instructive with their children now, even if they're playing with a gun, that you never aim it at another person, especially the face or the body, and feeling like that will potentially offset the possible negative consequences of if a child finds a real gun, which is the thing we really worry about ultimately.
Are there certain kinds of toy guns that maybe you would steer parents away from, like the more realistic looking ones, for example?
I think the ones that look more realistic, the ones that look like assault rifles, I mean, there really are very realistic looking guns out there. The other part of this, which is a really nuanced part of the discussion, is that a lot of families of minority kids, especially African-American boys, are very worried about their children playing with things that look like guns and the potential ramifications of that. So I think there's lots of parts of the discussion, but yeah, staying away from those ones that look super realistic, the Nerf guns, the things that are obviously child toys, I think lots of parents feel more comfortable with.
So I think we have some photos, but I wanted to ask about this thing that happened last week with Prince George. I mean, he's like a preschooler, and these photos went viral of him pointing this gun, playing with this gun while he was watching his dad play a sporting event or whatever. And there was a lot of criticism, a lot of outrage at his mom. This was bad parenting, blah, blah, blah. Is that, I mean, first of all, is that our place? I mean, parent shaming is just as bad in a lot of ways, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think one point in that debate is that he lives in a country and his parents live in a country where there are not mass shootings and school shootings all the time. So that may be part of their comfort level. But I think really it's not about shaming parents. It's about having discussions about if our kids are going to do something, how can we make it the most safe and the most productive for them, rather than really pointing the finger at people and saying that you're a bad parent if you do this or you do that.
I want to ask about real guns because a lot of people have real guns. I grew up, my dad's a cop, and he had handguns in our home. And so, you know, it was guns aren't toys, but here's what a real gun is and how it works. Like, what about that conversation with your kids?
So discussions are helpful. What we actually know, though, is that even kids who have had really clear instruction never to touch a gun, never to pick up a gun, that instinct is when they see it, they go right to it and pick it up. And often what they do is point it at someone else. And so the most important thing parents can do is that if they have guns in their home, that they're stored locked, really locked in a place where a child can't access them, unloaded and separate from the ammunition.
So even if you've had a great productive conversation with your kids and you feel like they know, you still need to make sure that you're going the extra step to care for your guns appropriately.
Kids are impulsive, and even though they know what they're supposed to do, we know that they don't always do it. And so the best step you can take is really safe storage at home.
So bottom line this in the last couple of seconds for us, it sounds like a discussion looking at your own family's morals and ethics are really where this should start.
Yeah, I think it's very family dependent, and I think the most important thing is to talk about it, to store guns safely, and to be open to discussion with your pediatrician too.
Awesome. Dr. Elizabeth Mead, Swedish Medical Center, thank you very much for being here.